Good evening for yet another Ray Talks series. Today being a horticulture day in Karnataka. So frankly, I didn't plan, rather we all didn't plan for this day, but it's nice that we are meeting on a horticulture day. And it says, on the eve of the birthday of Father of Horticulture in India, Dr. M.H. Marigauda, who revolutionized the crop development in Karnataka, we celebrate August 8th as Horticulture Day. So what would be a better day to have this series of Ray Talks than any other? Friends, yes, Vishnuji is also joined. Vilasji, welcome. Hello.
नमस्ते
नमस्कार. अभी शुरू किए हम लोग. So today we would be discussing changing horticulture landscape in India. And when we speak about changing landscape in India, we are not just trying to speak how to increase the yield, how to save the crop, how the logistics should be increased. But what we are trying to see is, one second, I think there's, so what we are trying to see is how overall horticulture can be improved, developed, taken to a greater height in India. So today, I have outstanding Ray speakers. I have Ray speaker Shri Vilas Vishnuji Shinde. I have Ray speaker Punima Khandelwal. I have Ray speaker Pankaj Khandelwal and have Ray speaker GVK Naidu. I would be talking to each one of them on how the initiatives they have taken, how they are revolutionizing horticulture in India. Before I speak or introduce my Ray speakers, let me give a brief introduction about Ray Consulting. Me, Rajkumar Agarwal, I started consulting after a long 25 years stint in agri industry, having worked with companies like Rallis India, Cheminova, PI Industries, and Nagarjuna Fertilizers. About 8 years ago, I felt that there was space for agri consulting in India, and we could do with an integrated platform in the agri domain. Ray Consulting brings some substantial experience to the diversified agriculture sector by advising leading players across in India and Southeast Asia on a range of strategic, commercial, and operational issues. Ray Consulting understands the unique dynamics of agricultural value chain, the critical issues and challenges seeking to grow and elevate performance. Ray Consulting works with all the agri value chain segments. Ray Consulting's deep agribusiness sector expertise, growth strategy development capabilities enable us to deliver uniquely rich insights that lead to meaningful impact to our clients on growth strategy, mergers and acquisitions, go-to-market commercial strategy for the business performance improvement. And before I go further, I thank our sponsors, Shri Bio Aesthetics, based out of Hyderabad, headed by Dr. K.R.K. Reddy, founded by Dr. K.R.K. Reddy, a veteran in microbiomes. We also thank Cytozyme Incorporation USA for supporting Ray Talks and the Seedworks International based out of Hyderabad. I have a very complimentary note from the Managing Director and CEO of Seedworks, Venkatram. I would like to play it for you. It's a great great compliment from Venkat, which has come to me. So I would like to share with everybody. Just give me a minute. Sorry, I just came to, I think there was audio was an issue, I think. Yeah, I'll just play it again. Please bear with me for a minute.
बोलो टाइम में लगे टाटा नीचे उठाई
Good day, everyone, and I would like to congratulate Rajkumar for starting this initiative, Ray Talks. Ray Talks, as all of you would know, is a webinar where Raj is bringing in industry thought leaders, practicing managers, academicians, and policymakers to discuss various issues across the entire gamut of agriculture, both upstream as well as downstream. I've been going through the webinar series, and it has been an amazing experience personally to me in terms of the variety of the topics which have been covered. I'm sure it has a great learning experience for all the practicing managers across the agriculture industry, as well as students, and also probably, inputs from this webinar might also be useful for the policymakers as they are deciding on the next steps in agriculture. Thank you, Raj, again, and all the best.
Thanks, Venkat, for this awesome words. It will only encourage us to do much better. Great. Now, let me quickly introduce my race speakers. Let me start with Pankaj and Poonima Khandalwal, the power couple in horticulture industry. And Pankaj, with his wife Poonima, founded INI Farms in 2009 and have built INI Farms into a global enterprise. With direct farm to fork model, INI Farms work with over 5,000 farmers and links them directly to world's largest retailers. With exposed to over 35 countries, which include US, Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and New Zealand, INI is doing an awesome service to the agriculture sector in India. Coming to the qualifications, Poonima holds a bachelor's degree in economics from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and an MBA from TAPMI, Manipal. Welcome, Poonima. And Pankaj holds a computer science graduation from IIT Kanpur and has an MBA from IIM Kolkata. Welcome, Poonima and Pankaj. We are honored to have you.
Thank you so much, Raj. Thank you for that introduction.
Yes. And I have with me Shri Vilash Vishnu Shinde Bhau. Mr. Shinde is the Managing Director and Chairman of Sahyadri Farms. He created a successful farmer-owned and operated value chain for the fruits and vegetables for the small and marginal farmers from Nashik area, making their farming profitable and sustainable. Another successful farm-to-fork integrated model. Shinde focused productivity, quality, cost reduction, finance, post-harvest, logistics and marketing, and has developed to boost farmers' income in that area. Vilasji consolidated Sahyadri Farms' position as one of the leading fresh fruits vegetable exports. Sahyadri Farms has also ventured into its own retail chain for fruits, vegetables, and for processed products. Vilasji, आपका स्वागत है. You're welcome to this.
Thank you, Rajji.
Yeah. And then I have our own Mr. GVK Naidu Garu. Mr. GVK Naidu has over 30 years experience in the field of agribusiness with focus on exports from India. He spearheaded Sam Agri as world's largest producer of pomegranate arrays. He also initiated collaboration with Israeli technology to introduce fresh, cut and prepared fruit exports from India. Mr. GVK Naidu is a graduate from UAS Bengaluru and had earliest worked at Syngenta before starting out as a serial entrepreneur in agri imports and agri exports. Mr. Naidu, you're welcome. I'm feeling really awesome because each one of you come from a different background, but you have taken horticulture as a cause in the country. Before I start specific questions to all of you, last almost 5 months in India at least, and almost 8 months across the globe, the pandemic is really creating havoc. And all of you being in this perishable business, and incidentally, not so much presence for you in India, but you're looking outside the country. I wanted to understand quickly in a minute from each one of you, how this pandemic times has made you better. Let me put it that way. I won't put that, how you are facing the challenges. I'm sure all of you have come out very successfully from this situation. So let me start with Pankaj.
Yeah, it's much easier to talk about what problems were there than how it has made us better. But if I were to start, and one thing that stands out, Raj, for us is that actually it brings your organization, your people together in a way that you wouldn't have imagined possible. Right? The kind of response that the team that does together. The crisis is of course there, and it's there for everyone. I think what differentiates is how people respond to it, and we are extremely proud of our team. There's a personal risk involved for everyone, right? And being on the ground, being in essentials, and I think it's true for probably all three of us. For us, I think the team, through new leaders, through new ideas, through new ways of being for us as an organization. I think one thing that I would say that we've become better compared to 5 years ago is, I think, the entire leadership team and the organization. Each one individual has grown and contributed to it, which makes you very proud. As entrepreneurs, I think the growth of individuals, of people, of jobs you create is always the most important thing than anything else. And when you see people grow, it gives you a great feeling of satisfaction. So yeah, that's one thing that I would like to say. We have grown, and that's been a very proud moment for us.
Thanks, Pankaj. Punya, would you like to add something?
Yeah, so I think Pankaj has talked on people front. So let me, move to, I think, customers. It's created a different bond because it's a crisis which is not just India-centric. It's a crisis which is across the globe. So everybody is in it together. And I think the conversation that you are able to have with the customer, I think the bond that you are able to create and be there together in difficult times, I think that's been an immense learning for us. And the second thing I would say is that these times have thrown immense opportunities for us to fast track some of our initiatives, uh, which otherwise would have taken longer. So whether it's technology, whether it's getting direct to consumer, I think all of those initiatives have, just been on the forefront, and we just fast tracked all of those initiatives. So
great, great. विलास जी भाऊ, see, आप नासिक बैठते हैं, you sit in Nasik, your main in Nasik, and during the peak period when grapes were supposed to be exported, so how did you manage?
So definitely, for the grape business, it was a challenging situation because when the pandemic and the lockdown situation was announced, that was a peak season of grape. So 23rd March, actually almost 40% grapes were in field and almost 30% grapes were on water. So actually that was a critical situation for overall business. And that's why actually the situation definitely impacted big on the big level for overall grape, for all the grape exporter and also for the grape farmers. At Sahyadri, we lost almost 40% grape business compared to last year. So financially also there are huge losses we face at producer company level and also at farm level. The prices which farmers were getting around 70 to 80 rupees, that came down to 10 to 20 rupees. We try to pay maximum to our farmers by selling that export quality grapes in domestic market in better way and also with our existing customer in Europe. But the Europe market also got completely crashed. From 12 euro, it came to 6 to 7 euro. So that was a difficult situation, definitely for everyone. But actually, all that situation we covered through our other verticals. So the in domestic market, particularly in retail market, we got a big opportunity because of this pandemic situation. So Sahyadri's retail business is actually grown up by 40% during this 3 months period, and almost 1 lakh new customers we got during this last 4 months period. And I think that happens only because of the pandemic situation. So this is I think you can say that a 50% situation. Some where we've got losses and somewhere actually we cover up in better way.
I think you make sense. One man's food is another man's poison. I don't know if it's the right thing, but I happen to eat mangoes and grapes together this year. I mean, grapes is a very good quality grapes I got in Hyderabad even up to May, thanks to one way. I had a good price also. So never we ate mangoes and grapes together, but we could eat that. So that's how it happened. But handled the situation very well. Naidu Garu, I think your entire business was on exports for pomegranate.
Entire business and exports and entire business and air freight.
Yes.
The situation.
So how did you handle the situation?
We have been trying to handle. I wouldn't say we have handled the situation. We are trying to handle the situation still. But as you say, it is a pandemic. It's something which nobody imagined in anybody's life. We were just only thinking about business. But this is something everybody need to think. There is something beyond life and something beyond business, So it makes you think like how Vilas said, how to take this pandemic disadvantage to an advantageous situation, kind of things need to be worked out, and this has put people to think in such directions.
Great. Now I'll come to my regular questions. It's incidentally, it is not one of those coffee with Karan show. We have little intellectual questions here, which is, the whole purpose of my Ray Talks or Ray Consulting going is you see the number. No show in the country has got so many dedicated audience coming in, because we bring in, thanks to leaders like you who speak so passionately, and it becomes a solution for most of our audience. So that's the reason why we are all happy, and I thank audience again and again. They encourage us so much by participating and then asking us to. They also give us subjects, and sometimes they mention us that you please bring this leader to speak. So let me start with specific questions to each one of you. I'm sure with this, we'll try and understand the horticulture scenario in the country today and what the way forward. So let me start with the first question to Punima. Ladies first. So,
Okay.
you know, you built a global brand. So how does it reflect in building the country's brand along with that?
Sure, Raj. So, when we got into this space, we realized that India as a country, when it came to the fruits and vegetable space, had a brand value which was negative, right? So people did not trust what was coming. Uh, People did not respect what an Indian produce should command. And for genuine reasons, and I think that's the opportunity we identified, and we said that we need to kind of change the entire image of this country and associated with that is our own brand. So that brings me to three critical elements, which are trust, respect, and love. This is what brand is about, whether it's the country or whether it's your product. And I think that as an organization, we realized that we had to work on all three of them, which is that our products, our country, when it goes onto a retail shelf in say a US or a Europe, it is commanding the same kind of respect and love that a product which is coming from Latin America or from US or from Europe itself, right? So that is what we decided to work on. And we realized that there were three important things. Again, when we're talking of respect, trust, and love, we realized that in this space, there were three elements that, you had to work on, which was, fruits is inherently inconsistent, right? And when you're talking about a brand and you're talking about brand India or a brand of the fruit that is going on the shelf, you are talking about consistency, because no brand can be built if you're not consistent, right? So the three important things that I think we decided to pursue was that we had to ensure that there is consistency of availability, that there is consistency of product quality, and that there is consistency of services. I think these were very, very critical for us. And that's how we approached our entire business, because that's where we realized was a big gap when India was perceived in the overseas market as a fruit brand.
So that's the reason I specifically asked. Building an individual brand is quite comfortable, but when it happens to a product like perishable product like horticultural, somehow we have not that good image abroad. Food. I'm told that though we are one of the largest producers of dairy, which I'll relate this question to Vilasji a little later, but still people are reluctant to accept our dairy products. Milk, something like that. But you are successful. The reason I put you this question is it is not only building an INI brand, but when you go there, you're also building an India brand there. So the trust flows and then market opens for many other people. So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely. And I think, Raj, it's about the community. So the people you see here have all played a part in building that brand internationally, as far as, when it comes to fruits within the Indian context.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Punima. Now that brings to a little different question to Vilasji. Vilasji, we have a revolution called white revolution in the milk industry, in the milk segment rather. So my question to you is, milk and horticulture both are perishable and high value commodities. Then why India has succeeded in creating efficient supply chain model in milk? Why not in horticulture? What could be the specific challenges of horticulture sector in India in the context? Hope my question was clear. Simply put it across, one segment which is so perishable is so successful, and why not horticulture? In fact, I would personally feel horticulture probably would have a better acceptance than milk.
vegetables, there is no single crop having the 365 days supply chain from one point. Maybe throughout the country, if you see some crops like banana, which is a 365 days available crop, but not from one point. For maintaining the 365 days supply chain, you have to change locations. So that is a different challenge of horticulture industry than milk. Milk at one point you can have the proper the integrated supply chain from procurement, then for the handling, processing, and distribution with the whatever the scale you are planning. But in horticulture, it's always a difficult challenge to plan the scale and along with the consistency and the quality which the customer is expecting now in also in domestic market as per the international standard. So I think that is a one big challenge, that availability of any single product at one point. This is the one crucial horticulture industry challenge. Another is seasonality. Most of the crops are available during the season only, like the green peas, which is the one biggest product in north area, but that is available only for 4 months. Or all the grapes in Maharashtra, which is available for maximum around 5 months. So if I am creating any infrastructure for that particular crop and I am utilizing only for 4 months to 5 months, then definitely the remaining periods, the ideal infrastructure, the manpower, that cost is coming on the product, and then the product becomes costly. And that is, I think, one another challenge, seasonality. So how to utilize the infrastructure in efficient manner? I think that is a one crucial challenge for the horticulture industry. In milk, that problem is definitely we can solve because of the 365 days supply chain. Another is that in horticulture, if you are targeting only one market, only the fresh market, and in that again one specific area, whether it is for export or for the domestic, that will not serve the farmers' complete need. Farmer is always expecting that how he can get the 100% solution at one point, and that though he is focusing for the better quality or the specific quality, but it is not in his hand to produce the same quality throughout his area. Always there is some along with the premium quality, some B grade, C grade product is coming from the field, and if as a any front end any stakeholder, if is giving only solution in one area, that will not serve the farmer's purpose. So I think that is again one challenge, the integrated post-service management for the horticulture sector that we are not developing last 70 years. That is one, I think, big missing area in horticulture. Now the things are coming in the right way, like the Sahyadri, where we have now planned that how you can utilize infrastructure with integration of 2-3 crops in one cluster. So in the 5 months, if I am handling grapes, and in remaining period, I am handling some pomegranate or some vegetables, and through that I am utilizing the infrastructure. Or the farmer is also getting a solution for the 100% his crop produce through export, also through the domestic sale, and also through the processing. I think now the horticulture industry is going in the right direction. Same initiatives are coming in different areas with the integrated post-service facilities, or now the mega food park, or the people, whether it is a INF farm or the SAM-AV. Now everyone is focusing on the same line, that how we can give the solution to the 100% farmers produce. And now then I think now the future will change. So this we could not develop in last 70 years. That is actual I think the big difference between milk and horticulture sector.
Good. I mean, you spoke about the challenges, and especially seasonality is one of the challenges we face in the country. Like, can we look into, like we spoke about peas? It's cultivated, I mean, grown for 4 months in the winters, and then across the year, can it be kind of processed and then elevated to an availability around the year? Or is it a myth in India that, frozen food doesn't have so much of an acceptance, unlike milk, for example?
I think at consumer level, right communication is missing, whether it is a fresh or frozen product. Actually, frozen means not a processed product. It is actually a preserved product. Only with the proper cold chain or with the cold treatment, you are extending the shelf life. So there is no any further processing, or there is no any reaction with the product. So the fresh product quality is maintained properly with the frozen treatment. So that communication is not happening with the customer. That's why actually I think we are facing issue. Otherwise, if you see in Europe market, in Europe the consumers purchase On that side, almost whatever the vegetable he's buying, in that 50% is always a frozen.
Absolutely. No, that's
because
true.
Understand that the fresh and frozen is not a different. Only the shelf life is a, I think, a difference.
See, I was with Adani in Himachal Pradesh. The apple, for example, the way they store in the controlled atmosphere. So is there a way where we can look into a situation like that for all the horticultural crops?
Like apple?
Produce, like see, apple is stored in controlled atmosphere, not in cold storage. And even after 6 months, when they will take out the apple, when it reaches even down south in Chennai or Bangalore and Hyderabad, it is still as crispy as it was harvested yesterday.
I think every fruit and vegetable is having a different post-harvest protocol.
Okay.
The same, the apple's protocol, you cannot apply to pomegranate.
Yes. That is what my question was. Yeah.
So like with the pre-cooling, you can extend grape shelf life up to 4 months. And in vegetables, you can extend maximum by 15 days, not more than that. If you want to extend life, you have to go for frozen treatment. So that depends upon, I think, product to product, it varies.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Vilaji. Now, let me come to Pankaj. See, you're in exports. In fact, most of you are in exports who are on the panel here. The question for you is, despite 11% share in world, that's what a figure I have, somewhere I got it, in fruits and vegetable production, India's export is less than 1.5–2% in global trade. How would the recent regulatory changes impact India's fruit export? Like, a lot of decisions are being taken by the government. So will they help us?
Right. I think the regulatory transformation, in my point of view, have been quite significant. And they're going to be a great enabler of what's going to happen to the horticulture industry in general. The question with respect to how much it would help export, it's also dependent on a whole lot of other factors which are market driven. How do we get the value chain right of each of the products, right? So there is a regulatory aspect which is fundamentally the enabler of business, and there is the business aspect where you need to get things right. So keeping your question, how does the regulatory aspect change things for exports? There are actually fundamental transformations here that we are talking about. So if you look at the 3 major changes that have been in news, they're all very interesting. So the first one, for example,
Pankaj, can you just probably you need to move closer to the mic.
Is it any better? Is it better?
Okay.
Okay. So the first one, if you look at it from the simple thing like Essential Commodities Act, right? What they've allowed from an exports perspective is that Export Commodities Act is not applicable if you're actually into exports altogether, right? Now, these are not these are very fundamental exemptions, because in exports, when you're trying to build a business, you get into long-term contracts. And you cannot suddenly say that, my government is no longer allowing me to export something. While this used to happen much more for onions, for example, a typical fruit is not really been regulated so much. But this is a very, very important change which gives you confidence that if I get into a contract, I can honor it, right? That's being enabled. If you look at the changes into the contract, and the government is not calling it contract farming, they've given a different name. Fundamentally, it's about contract farming. Earlier, the way these contracts were drafted were with the kind of assumption that someone is trying to cheat each other. Now it's an enabled this thing which says the flexibility in the type of contract that you can get into, the consequences of it, the legal resolution mechanisms have been made very easy. It doesn't go into an assumption that the sponsor is trying to cheat the farmer. It is basically going into an assumption that 2 parties are coming into a contract together. And if something goes wrong, you have to find out who is at fault and then solve the problem, right? This is a very different language. Not only that, the contract farming agreements have, earlier, there was no real value into it. Today, there are many important things like they've been made as part of, you can use these contracts to actually draw down debt from banks, right? So there is a massive incentive for people to get into contract. Earlier, there was no incentive. Right now, it's a real incentive because that actually translates into a financial benefit that you can have both for the sponsor as well as for the farmer. Now, how exactly people are going to use it, what are the transformations, we'll have to see. But fundamentally, what I'm saying is that it's been much better thought through than ever. And therefore, it allows us to actually, from a regulatory point of view, makes life very, very easy compared to the way it was. And therefore, I strongly believe that these regulatory changes are going to make a huge difference to be able to export more and more commodities. At the end of the day, the markets will play out. To me, the simultaneous change, which is that we are getting to an excess production side. Earlier, as a country, we were always focused on food security. Today, we are talking about what is it that the consumer want? Can I predict? Right? It's a very different and very powerful conversation that we are having today, right? And that transforms in a major way while supported with the regulatory changes, right? Regulatory changes have enabled it. The market dynamics are changing, which to my mind, we do about $1.5 billion of exports. My sense is that it will become more than $10 billion opportunity in very recent, in future. And as Vilas was talking about that, you don't find companies which are more than 400, 500 crore. My gut sense is in 10 years, you will see a $1 billion revenue company out of India on the F&B sector. I mean, that's how positive I feel about this space. And very high chance that Vilas would be the first person to do that. But having said that, I think you'll see companies coming up and doing wonderful job because the markets are also aligning. It's not just about regulatory changes. It's a fundamental alignment of markets which will create this massive opportunity for Indian horticulture.
That's true. I think we all speak about farm to fork thing. I mean, recently it was mentioned, I was with a British delegation at ICRISAT. Somehow something came to my mind. They asked, what is that you're looking for? I said, probably now we need to from farm to fork. Say, like, instead of that, we need to fork to farm. As you rightly said, we need to understand what is the consumer requirement and then work accordingly. Plow back to the farming field. And thanks to you guys, you're bringing in the entire good agricultural practices that is required. For example, you need some specifications in a particular produce. So that's how you are guiding and getting it done. Awesome. Thanks, Pankaj. Now, Naidu sir, coming to you, something related question. What kind of government support is expected to enhance the export potential for horticultural products? And especially for you being in pomegranate, what kind of support you expect from the government, whether it's state government or central or whatever it is?
Thanks, Raj. I think this question has been answered by both my friends Vilas and
part of it.
Pankaj together. Ultimately, see, how does export happen? Export is something like, you need to increase the pie of Indian product in the international market. So that's where you develop your market. This development can happen only with an integrated approach or coordinated approach of all the stakeholders. The stakeholders, I mean, like, right from the government. When I say government, there are 2-3 departments involved in it. Is commerce involved in this, agriculture ministry involved in this, horticulture department involved in this, exporters, processors, and then the farmers. What we are currently trying to do is we are trying to export something which we are growing, and I would like to sell this product. I am not trying to sell the product which what consumer needs or what market needs. So in this case, we need to create a forum like where all these stakeholders get involved, make a planning according to the situations and weather conditions and identify the clusters. Like, you grow something which can sustain to that locality so that the farmers get a better price, create an infrastructure to handle that product, and create a cluster of other products to sustain this infrastructure and then continue the export. And while exporting, I mean, in the market, I mean, when there are about 10 players, 15 players in the market, like, it is not that all of us are trying to sell the same product. Like Nashik grows grapes. Everybody is trying to sell grapes and sending it to Europe or sending it to UK, wherever it is. It has to be something different. We need to identify which are the other potential markets which we could go. And do I have a market access for these these places? If not, who is the competent authority to get me an access? So that's where the stakeholders' involvement is important, that everybody gets involved into this, make an action plan, create a form, and everybody has to deliver so that we all together will increase the pie of the Indian share in the international market.
See, what I was looking was the government's point of view.
Government has to set up a kind of a forum, including all the stakeholders, and make a coordinated approach and delegate the responsibility to each and every individual, wherein when they need to rope in the state departments, they need to line up all the processes and create the infrastructure either with the government support or support the industry who could set up the infrastructure and promote them, encourage them rather than promoting. I would say you should encourage them. For example, today in this kind of a pandemic scenario, what is that government should come into our rescue today? First of all, nobody is talking to us today. It's up to like, you know, if I am able to survive, I am surviving. Otherwise, no. I will only get a call, how much of advance tax did you pay for that? Otherwise, I mean, this is where you look at any developed countries where agricultural exports are phenomenal. The first thing is they are just looking at the balance sheets and the track record of the tax payments of such companies and trying to support them in this kind of a situation. Here, nothing is there, like, you know. I mean, I'm not trying to blame the government. I mean, government should look at supporting this kind of a system.
Okay, got it. Now, let me.
Raj, if I could just add to what Mr. Naidu was saying.
Please.
The role of government actually is also in opening up markets, right? So there are markets which are not yet open for certain products out of India. And there is a need for the government to come in and ensure and facilitate that process of opening up of markets for specific products out of India. So that's the other role that the government needs to play besides the whole regulatory and support, just ensuring that the ecosystem is right for exports.
One more
yes.
thing I would like to add on here is, you know, like once they create a market access and we are there, and there are some grievances, either it could be a non-tariff barrier,
Yes.
a tariff barrier, or a technical barrier, whatever it is. And if this issue has to be addressed, the government has to create a kind of a task force, I would say, where
Yes.
the exact task takers have to be involved into this, and somebody has to take the responsibility for this. In our case, what's happening, if there is a barrier being established, we are trying to move on the papers between the tables. Like, you know, it's taking years to get the papers moved from one table to the other table. Instead, there has to be some kind of a body which can address the issue and resolve the issue. One simple example, we lost pomegranate Erril's market in USA. It is almost 2 years now. For this September, we are touching 2 years. We have not been able, this is not a big task. It is just the involvement of the government to be resolved into this. I mean, where the exact action is not being taken now so far.
In fact, I wanted to put
a task force.
Yes. I wanted to put a question similarly, and one of my audience, Shiva, has just taken away my idea. I wanted to put a question on the government has come out with a strategy of one product, one district. So will horticulture fit into somewhere this where you can have a cluster of several districts, grow only one product, though it could be concentrated like Nasik grapes or something, but you will have a lot of infrastructure support. From there, probably you can move to the thing. It may take 3 to 5 years to start totally a fresh cultivation and then process and then export. But will this fit into this export category?
I wouldn't say it is one product, one district. It has to be with multiple options to be given, because as Mr. Vilas was clearly mentioning, we need to sustain the infrastructure with multiple crops and multiple activities. If I go with one crop, it's impossible to sustain the business.
Because see, the Telangana government, for example, have gone for a very recommended crop cultivation in Telangana. So it's debatable. Some people say yes, it's good, and some people say they don't even know how to cultivate that particular crop, and how can we insist them to cultivate that kind of a crop? A lot of debates happening here. So maybe one of the sessions I'll have on this later, that how it works. Yeah, thank you, Naidu ji and Purnima. Now I'll come to Purnima, little different. Now let's move to a different segment. Yeah. You know that disintermediation has been talked about for over 20 years now in India. And it has failed to deliver the often repeated high price for the farmer and lower price for the consumer. Whereas I&I has disintermediated the entire supply chain and worked directly with retailers worldwide. What has made this work, and how did you make it happen? I mean, this is something, like I am as a consumer, I want the best thing at a lower price. But as a farmer, he wants to get it at a better price. So how do you balance this?
So Raj, your first question was around brand, and brand commands premium, right?
Yes.
So if you talk about premium, you're going away from the whole thesis of lowest price for the consumer, right? I'm actually creating a brand and I want to command a premium. So, therefore this whole logic of this being a cost cutting game is really not where it is. I think disintermediation is about ensuring that you're able to deliver the right product to the consumer. In India, the entire supply chain is completely broken, right? And all of us here on this panel today are integrated players. We've realized the importance of taking the demand or the requirements of the consumer to the farmer and then asking him to grow what is needed for specific markets, right? So that's the whole construct around being integrated, and therefore the whole thesis is not around cost cutting, but around value creation. I think we need to understand that, right? So this disintermediation is about value creation, and when you create value, the value needs to be enjoyed by these different stakeholders in that value chain, right? So when you're creating value, so it's not about lowest cost in any case. It is about getting the right price for your product and then ensuring that that acts as an incentive for your farmer to grow to the next level of productivity, quality, and enhancement on his farm, whether it is technology. So those things have to be enabled through this disintermediation that we are talking about. It's not about, ensuring that you're paying higher to the farmer. You can't pay higher to the farmer because it's not about cost cutting. It is actually about value creation and ensuring that the value that you're creating at the consumer end, you're ensuring that the entire supply chain benefits from that value.
Suppose we're talking about the right value. Are there the same produce be offered in different formats?
And what do you mean by different formats, Raj?
Like you have a particular vegetable, say beans. So if I have to buy beans, like in India, I prefer to buy beans as in where in condition, that's the way it is harvested from the crop. So if I have to cut it, process it the way you're doing for pomegranate aerials. So is that possible for other fruits and vegetables also?
I think for everything, right? And like Vilas had earlier mentioned, that when you're growing all grades of fruits, and all grades of fruits and vegetables need to find a market for itself. Not everything can go as stable variety. Not everything can command a premium. And therefore, there has to be some kind of a value addition possibility that we need to explore for the not so good quality produce. And when I say good quality, in case of pomegranates, for example, when we do aerials, it is because the seeds inside are good. It's just that the size of the fruit is small, or there are blemish on the scale. That's where it's losing its value. And therefore, there's a value addition possibility. So absolutely, we have to figure out different formats for our different crops which need to further go into the market. Because that's, again, a very important element of creating value. Because what's getting produced on the farm is actually all grades of fruits and vegetables. It's not that I have just a farm which is producing only for a consumer sitting in Europe. So that's not possible. And therefore, that value addition and different formats in that context is extremely critical, and that's where value will get generated.
As you rightly mentioned, this is what the thing is. When we look at the value addition, I have this mindset in Indian segment, many of the segments that, this is not for me. This is for export. This is for a higher end. Even if, for example, you take that modern retail. Now, modern retail itself has come out with different concept stores, like high-end stores, premium stores, where they store all this, premium segment kind of a thing. So we are kind of segmenting it. So how do you bring it to what we call, as C.K. Prahalas puts, the bottom of the pyramid, so that everybody gets it?
So
again, how do you make it available to everybody?
So I think it's available to everybody. I think the question is, who's willing to pay what for the variety that is, or the quality that is getting produced now. So if I want a specific size of fruit, if I want a specific kind of fruit, I should be willing to pay a premium, because that fruit is actually produced in much lower quantity on the field itself. And why is it more expensive? Right? It is more expensive because it is getting used in a limited quantity. So that's point number one. In terms of availability, I think it's how the consumer evolves. The way consumer is evolving, I think the reach and the availability is expanding. Again, Pottery Vilas, they've done a massive job, which is very commendable during these COVID times. Sitting here in Bombay, my society, and I am getting fruits from Sahyadri Farms today, right? So it's about accessing that consumer base, because the consumer is there. How do we ensure that the product is reaching to the consumer? And that's where the availability comes in. And second is the consumer willing to pay the price that I'm willing to charge? Today, as a consumer, I'm willing to pay for safe food, something which is coming direct from source. So when it is coming from Sahyadri Farms, I know it's coming from a trusted source. And if Sahyadri Farms today charges me a premium for that, I'm mentally prepared to pay that premium, right? So the consumer has to be right there in terms of his own mindset to pay for what the product demands.
Got it.
So I think, reach and availability is a question of course, logistics, but it's also about the readiness of the consumer to pay for certain formats of the product.
Fine. Let me move to Vilasji. Vilasji, how effective is FPC model for horticulture value chain?
I think whatever the discussion you did just now about the consumers' expectation, so about the farmers' his expectation about the fair price. I think this problem is the biggest problem for overall Indian agriculture. So in India, 80% farmers who are having just 1 hectare land, they are always on the mercy of the government, or they are expecting that there will be some messiah will come and solve their problems. And that is not going to happen with any, whatever the political leaders are making any statements. Everybody knows that the farmer is now need to understand that farming is purely a business. And in business, as an enterprise, everybody as a farmer, he need to become an entrepreneur mind. And with that thought, he should understand that whatever the problems he is having, all that problems gets a solution through his own initiative. There is no another alternative. There is no just he will not just he will just say that हमें पैदा करना आता है लेकिन हमें बेचना आता नहीं है. Or that's why somebody should come forward and give support about the whatever the talk is happening about the MSP price, or in case of glut situation, government should come forward for processing. Like that, there are so many expectations. But I think now people need to understand the problem could be solved only through the farmer's own initiative. Farmer producer company is the right way, I think, on that line. Without collective effort, I think we could not solve all the supply chain related problems, because without scale, there will not be any efficiency, and if there is no efficiency, then no business can sustain in the competition. I think all our small farmers, they need to understand that their competition is now in the global market.
Yeah.
I am growing grapes in Nasik, in small village with 2 acre land and with so many problems. But still my competition is with California grape grower or South African grower or with the Chilean grower. And it's not only about the international market, in my own market. Now people are competing with the global farmers. And that's actually now how to solve this situation. I think this is the biggest challenge for the Indian farmer community. And that's why the collective is the only answer, and collective in the professional manner. Collective is not just for coming together and making some politics or using that collective for different purpose, which happens with our most of the cooperatives in the last 100 years. So farmer producer company is the right concept where farmers are coming together, creating the scale, and through the scale, creating the efficiency, and they can compete in the market, and with the pure professional approach, with the pure professional thinking about all the challenges of supply chain. whether it is on the consumer side, experimenting on the products quality side or on the price side. That should be the problem of farmer. Today, Indian farmer is not thinking about the consumer. He's just growing whatever the things he wants to grow, and then he's saying that I'm not getting price or I'm not supported by the stakeholders, and everybody is trying to exploit me. So I think this approach we need to change, and this with the farmer producer company concept, a lot of new initiatives which are coming in country in different crops. New ventures are developing in a different part of the country, and this is now, I think, the same like milk, which Dr. Kurian has created through Amul model. You will see the same models in different communities. The farmer-owned brand, where farmer is controlling the complete value chain from production, post-harvest, and up to marketing up to the consumer level. I think all these things will be possible only through the farmer-producer company model. Without that, I think then there is only one solution for the farmer. Don't do farming. Otherwise, if you want to continue farming, there is only one alternative: come together, create some professional structures where you could solve your own problems.
See, FPCs, shall I take it as an extension of FPOs? Because see, FPOs have been spoken about so much, and to some extent you are seeing that, the green shoots of success in FPOs. Vilasji?
I think FPO is a broader term where farmer producer organization means all the farmer collectives, whether it is a cooperative, whether it is a self-help group, or whether it is a producer company format, or even any private company. But the coming together and creating a collective, I think that is actually the thought behind the FPO. But without professionalism and without the understanding of all the challenges or understanding of all the stakeholders' need, we could not solve this problem. So I think that thought is coming in better way with the farmer producer company concept. In the farmer to consumer value chain, if every stakeholder, the main stakeholder, farmer and consumer, and along with other stakeholders, whether it is any service provider or any packing material supplier, even any banker, insurance companies, or government, all stakeholders, if they are getting the value, then that's value chain will be sustainable. Then it go, and that is possible only with the main stakeholders initiative. So farmer initiative to create the value chains, I think that is a need of our.
Great. I'll move to a different subject for you. I mean, sorry to say, but sometimes I envy guys who are from non-agri sector and come and are successful in this sector. So this is a specific question. There is a reason for that. I mean, like recently we had Digital Ag India conference where a lot of startups were projected, and Government of Telangana supported us in understanding how this too can be said. So one of the things which all of us are aware, these startups have got huge technology available, and they're all, engineering background like yours. But when it comes to connecting with the agronomic practices or practices to be implemented on the ground, so my question to you is, do you think technology can bring the transformation for horticulture industry? And how do you combine with the usable technology?
Very interesting and very hot topic right now, especially in the investor circles.
Yes.
In the investor circle, it's all about ag tech. Right? In fact, ag is only 2 and tech is 4, right? So it's all about tech.
Yes.
It's quite amazing, and I've been part of quite a few of those discussions. Technology is going to make a huge amount of difference, irrespective of which sector we are talking about. Interestingly, when you look at broad perishable sectors, right? So a hotel industry, a room goes waste if it's not sold today. Airlines industry, a seed goes bad if it's not sold today. It's kind of interesting that in perishable sectors, technology has made a huge amount of difference, but not in horticulture, which actually gives the definition of perishable itself. Right? What happens is that it is actually, the product has to be consistent first. Without that, everything else does not fall into place, because if you deliver a bad product to a great technology, it's worth nothing, right? Having said that, technology is going to be a massive transformation going forward. That I'm 100% convinced. All of us have been using, for example, what we call as traceability, right? As a concept, it's not something new for exporters. It's parcel of our day-to-day life. It helps us to enable and identify the problems when something has happened, because in perishables, there would be some problem or the other. That system allows us to actually decode our day-to-day problems and drive immense amount of efficiency. However, when you talk of technology, I convert that traceability into a QR code. I give a QR code to a consumer, I put it on my food, and it gets a unique identity, it gets its Aadhaar, right? And the consumer scans it and says hello to the farmer, right? What is the meaning of this? The meaning is that I'm giving a trust and assurance to the consumer that it's coming from a specific farmer sitting in Maharashtra, in Nashik district, in Sholapur district somewhere. And if you want to say hello, you can say hello. That's what technology enables us to do. While using the same traceability system, you can transform what value technology can create. Things that were not possible earlier at all, we can do that. At the same time, creating scale. How do you create scale with smallholder farmers, right? Today, when we are buying pomegranates, there are at least 10 deals happening on a daily basis on the ground. How do I, sitting here, control the price, right? What price am I buying at? How do you control something like that? Or how do you control the quality across different farmers that you're talking about? How do you get a prediction of what's going to happen 3 months later on the pomegranate crop? Is the quality going to be right? Is the supply going to be sufficient? And therefore, is price going to move up or down? These were things which are not possible 10 years ago, right? These have really been made possible today by enablement through technology. So it is again extremely enabling factor for this industry. Would be driven by how do we use it, what real value we put it to. It would drive efficiencies, as well as it will create new ways of doing business, right? So both things are going to happen. And it's going to be a very, very powerful enabler of horticulture space in India, whether it is in the domestic market or whether it is in the export.
See, now technology, as you started, there's a hot subject in the investors forum. So incidentally, what I have observed is that, from technology point of view, people are speaking more from the digitization point of view. So when it comes to farmer, are there any tools which, for example, all of you, both Sahyadri, INI and Sam, now what are the tools you're all trying to use to enhance farmers' farm productivity and make his life comfortable? Each one of you can answer this. Naidu Garu?
It's basically, see, once we start giving a value for each grade of his produce, that itself is like, giving a better support price to the farmer, which can happen only through a value addition of each and every individual product. For example, if you look at pomegranate as our individual product, we have got all grades of fruits. If I am able to create value for class 1, class 2, class 3, so I am able to service the farmer with a better price proposition than he could sell in the open market, and not looking for any messiah, as Mr. Vilas was mentioning. This is one kind of a tool which a farmer can utilize. But this can happen only when you have a systematic approach, like, where I have a proper cluster, where I sustain with, you identify a locality where what all crops can be grown in this area, and try to develop those kind of crops and encourage those farmers. Instead of like you said, one district, one crop. Instead, in one district, what are the weather conditions? What is it suitable? What kind of crops can be grown over there? We need to encourage and promote those crops in that particular area and encourage the people with that. So basically, in India, the generic issue is the fragmented land holding, wherein I cannot get like what Pankaj was mentioning, like, today the need of the day is what is the traceability of the product and food safety standards. If I have to maintain this, I need to have a proper farm which can deliver me to my standards, which is not possible for any small farmer to go with an intensive farming, and it will not be viable for him to produce such product. In such case, it's going to be, you need to develop a uniform quality to give it to us. Yeah.
Great. Vilasji, technology from Sahyadri. I mean, of course, traceability is one of the things which we are all aware of.
Yeah. Actually, at Sahyadri from first day, we have cleared that the real change will happen in agriculture only because of the technology innovations. So from the first day at farm level, at post-harvest level, and at market level, we are trying to develop different tools to create efficiency for giving the better value for farmer and also to the consumer. At farm level, our thought is clear that whatever the produce is coming from the farm, it should be at par with the global standards in terms of the quality and also in terms of the productivity. So to reach to that level, we need a continuous support to the farmer with in different ways. So whether it is a climate related data at through that right data, right advice at right time. So that is the one challenge we have solved with the with our agroadvisory tool, which we have developed with a few of our partners. Now Sahyadri has invested in such tools. So we have also one company, our associated company, who is developing the low-cost weather stations, where the whatever the current cost we are paying to the imported weather stations, instead of that, with only 20% cost, we are now trying to build our own weather stations. And then the idea is to put every plot specific weather stations. So every plot will get the his own specific data, whether it is about rainfall, whether it is about temperature, humidity. So that in that area, Sahyadri has invested a lot in last 2-3 years. Then another technology we have developed with the help of TCS Innovation Center in Nasik, which is known as a DISC, Digital Impact Square. So with their help, we have developed some technology for the onion storage. So efficient onion storage systems. So the smart Godam, that is the one Sahyadri's initiative in last 2 years. And another, then the few technologies on the market side. So as you said, already said that the traceability is now the, I think is a integral part of the any agricultural commodity, specifically horticulture, where the quality related consumers expectation or the food safety related all the his expectation that we can prove only through the proper digital tools. So there actually Sahyadri is having the approach that whatever the product Sahyadri is providing, whether it is for Europe market or for the local market, whether it is a Nasik or Mumbai based customer, will give the same standard which we are offering to the European customer. So 100% traceability we are providing to all our customers. And now we are coming to the next level. It's not only about food safety, but about price also, how we can give the full transparency. So Sahyadri has developed the blockchain platform. So where now we are coming with the idea that we'll give the full transparency about the food safety and also about the price, how the price is actually work out. When we are offering any certain price to the customer, what is the base of that price? Because in horticulture, if you see that is a bigger challenge. The price is continuously fluctuating. Every day or every week, you will see the price variation, and that variation is up to 200-300% also. So from consumer side, always there is actually the question that why this cost you are asking for us. He always saying that महंगा है. जब 10 रुपए तब भी महंगा लगता है, 5 रुपए होने के बाद महंगा लगता है. Because he does not believe on the price which we are offering. So, and also on the farmer side, farmer is also saying that I'm not getting the right price. So actually the price is always dependent on the supply demand situation at that particular level. And then if you are giving the complete transparency, how the prices work out. So farmer and consumer definitely both can actually get the right benefit and also get the trust on the product. And through that, then only the, I think, business can grow. So yes. Sahyadri invested in that technology also, and I think that will be the game changer in the future.
Thanks. Purnima, quickly from INI, the technology implementation.
Yeah. So, Raj, it's again right from farm to the customer, and I think we have a similar approach to things. So from, we are working with very large number of farmers across multiple states. So the idea is how do we bring them on one platform, right? And in some fields actually, and some crops, our engagement with farmers actually starts something like 3 months before harvest as well. And we start taking care of his farm and the kind of activities that need to happen on his farm. Now with these kind of applications, there's a constant monitoring, what he needs to do, whether he's done, in case the weather changes, what changes need to be implemented on the field itself, given the change in weather. Those kind of advisories and, forecasts can be provided to the farmers. We are actually approaching the whole farm level piece saying that every interaction that the farmer has with the organization, from the first meeting of a supervisor with the farmer, should be tracked on their device up to the harvest, right? And all our farmers are actually paid into their, I mean, we have all transaction happening into the bank account of farmers, right? So linking it again with our own ERP system to say everything. So the journey of the farmer from day one to the day payment has gone into his account is something that we want to track on one platform, which is about bringing all our 5,000 farmers on this one platform, right? So creating a farmer platform in that sense. Then there are these various tools that we are deploying on the supply chain side, and eventually on the customer side. Of course, traceability is one big element that we are working on. So those are some of the technology related interventions that we are working on. As the other thing, given that we again have a domestic presence, we sell in about 4 cities here in India, and we are also getting all our logistics online on one platform, right? So visibility of all our vehicle, vessel movement, air shipments, and all our domestic truck movements, all on one platform with one visibility across the organization on which vehicle is where. So that's the other initiative that we've taken.
Great, thanks. So I think I'll have a last round of question to Naidu, sir, and then we would like to take some questions from the audience. You can directly speak to the race speakers here. You can raise your hand, and then we'll allow you to speak when I finish with Mr. Naidu, and then post that we'll take the concluding takeaways from the race speakers here. So Naidu, sir, though most of this was discussed earlier, but I want to know specifically from you, does the cluster development approach work, or is the performing in this current, how is it performing in the current scenario? Cluster approach.
Yeah, actually, see, the earlier discussions almost answers those questions.
Yes. Specifically from your end, yeah.
Those people, the cluster development is important for enhancing the export potential in particular, but even for the domestic market, it is very important, but without a cluster, it is very difficult to segregate, to aggregate the product aggregate the export volume for any product. I would say, today, because of the fragmented farms, we are not able to procure the large amount of volumes. In such case, we need to identify, lot of youngsters are coming into the picture today. Like today platform, what Mr. Pankaj and Vilas, of course, Vilas and me are from the agriculture background, and Pankaj is from a technical background.
Yeah.
Unless this tech field, I would say that the cluster development is kind of promoting these kind of youngsters who are opting agriculture as a business option today in India. I have seen a lot of US returns, Europe return boys who are coming back and trying to set up high-tech agriculture and trying to sell the product in unorganized sector. And if they are given an opportunity, if you can envisage a system where these boys, these kind of youngsters are promoted, they would come out with all kinds of solutions, both with cluster as well as the market approach. They are able to produce the quality of product which consumer needs, and they will be able to create a marketing channel with all kinds of safety standards, traceability with technology adoption, and definitely they have better knowledge and vision about the industry needs of this.
Yeah, sorry, I just got a call. I was stuck there. Now, that, as you rightly said, the cluster, especially with the returnees and working with them, would really make a lot of difference. They have some hands up, and there are a lot of questions in Q&A. You see, there's 35 questions out there, so it's very difficult to answer each one of them. But I'll take one after the other, at least to begin with. Let some of the audience speak to you. I will ask each one of the audience whom I pick up to unmute and speak. Let me start with Soundarajan Sampath. Can you introduce yourself and specifically ask a question, Sampath?
Hi, I am a company called Janani Foods Private Limited based at Hyderabad. So I fully understand and appreciate all the points raised by the panel members. My question is export for small exporters, like or even FEC, they wanted to export on their own. There are issues in terms of payments from the buyers, especially from Dubai kind of things. So how you people are managing it, and what the government should do to ensure that there is no cheating?
Anybody, you have someone in mind who should answer this?
My friend, Mr. GVK Naidu.
Oh.
As all of us know, this is a perishable business. There is no price guarantee, payment guarantee for this kind of exports. Only thing is the market, I mean, the trade could be established only with the relations, integrity, and trust.
Yeah.
So we need to establish that and then go with that. Like, it's something like you identify the market first, identify the customer, and then you get back to the product, what you would like to sell, and try to do with it. And it is not that, there is an export market. Somebody is asking vegetables in Alavir market in Dubai, and I would like to send a container, and you go sit there for payments. It doesn't happen, Mr. Friend.
Okay. Hope you got your answer, Sampath.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take now Chengappa. Mr. Chengappa, can you introduce yourself and put a question?
Yeah. I'm Chengappa. I'm the former Vice Chancellor of the Agriculture University, Bangalore. Now, currently, I'm with Naidu. I am on the board of SAM Agritech. So, okay. And
I have a request. Don't put this question to Naidu.
Obviously, but I really appreciate the sharing of the experience by Vilas. Of course, I visited that place also, but I'm very happy to see Purnima and Pankaj doing a good job. Well, I just wanted to say, if you look at the macroeconomic indicators, now in India, the demand side factor for fruits and vegetables is very, very, you find that the demand is on the increase. But this supply side factor, there are many issues. And I think, the biggest challenge for this kind of entrepreneurs is the addressing the supply chain issues, and in which employing this technology is key, so that you can create a scale and bring down the cost. Otherwise, you'll not be able to do much. But I just want to say that, for example, what kind of efforts are you really making to see that this kind of vertical integration is taking place? Otherwise, you will not be very competitive in the market. I just would like Pankaj to answer that.
Being vertically integrated is getting to be more and more critical because that need to traceability, going back to the source, and the ability to manage the quality. See, what happens is that quality can only be created at the farm, but in the supply chain.
Can you come a little closer to the mic?
Yeah. What I was saying was that we need to understand that in perishables, the quality is basically created at the farm. And supply chain job is to maintain that quality, right? And if you do not, the quality is determined by the weakest link in the chain. So India is not organized enough to say that different people can be held responsible for any breakage in quality. So if you are going to play a quality game, vertical integration is an absolute critical requirement. There's no way out of that. I think all success stories that you would come out you would see in India in the horticulture space, they have actually been completely vertically integrated. So there's no other way out of that, and one would have to solve the problem of each product at an entire chain level. It's not that you can play in part of the chain.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Chengappa. Thanks for joining us. Let me go to Pradeep Mishra.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Pradeep.
Yeah, this is Pradeep Mishra from United Phosphorus. In the right time, because last week I was into the whole food processing with Argentina. We were making a presentation how the food demand exists in India and how the FDIs and from MNCs and company from outside can come. So I just wanted to put a point. What we analyze the whole data, the food demand, of course, is increasing, and in terms of opportunities and exports are it's just 2.4% of the value. And India is self-reliant, of course, in agriculture, but as far as the food processing is concerned, the current trading and the processed food is less than 10%. Maybe reasons, there's urbanization and there's fresh produce and there's a low labor participation. So I just wanted to ask, maybe Pankaj can take this question. What advantages do you feel as far as the demand is concerned in India to make this, say, an export of a USD 70 billion by 2022, which has been set by the Agri-Export to happen? A lot of questions, answers you have already given, mainly on the demand side and attracting opportunities. Could you elaborate on the geographical locations and high proposition of agriculture land and our climatic conditions, which gives us a competitive advantage to the demand side is concerned to fulfill the entire target set by the Indian government?
Pradeep, interesting question. It's also a complex problem to solve. So there are no easy answers to that. But if you look at from a macro perspective, what is happening is that the demand is shifting eastwards, internationally. Right? So US and Europe have been stagnant. And if you take last 10 years data, the growth in international trade, 90% of the growth has actually come from Asia. China, Middle East, India, Southeast Asia. These are the countries or the regions that have been actually driving the volume uptake in the international trade. Now that's very, very interesting, because what happens is that India is logistically in the center of this world, right? We have huge competitive advantage. It's a structural shift that we are talking about. 65% of world young population is going to be in this area by 2030. Okay? That's an amazing number, and that creates a massive opportunity, because what it means is that India is going to be most competitive from a logistics point of view to be able to service that demand. Now that's going to change from a macro perspective. What we need to do as an industry is around all these issues like regulatory, meeting the solving for the non-tariff barriers, government support that is required to be done. So there is a whole lot of work that would have to be done to be able to cater to that demand. But internationally, if you look at it, $70 billion of actually trade in the entire agriculture sector is not that big a deal. My sense is that the horticulture sector itself could, if we do a decent job of it, it's actually upwards of $10 billion just coming from F&B, which is $1.5 billion only, out of the about $35 billion of international trade that India does. It's a much smaller percentage, but that itself is going to give a disproportionately higher value to the international trade. So it's absolutely possible. Horticulture is going to drive that. That I'm 100% convinced about it. And then the structural shifts are actually taking place in favor of India to be able to go towards that kind of target. Now, I don't know it's $70 billion or $60 billion. No one knows. Directionally, I think we are in probably one of the best phases of last 70 years of our country's existence, that all these stars are aligning.
So, thanks, Pradeep. Yeah. Pradeep is one of our most, I would say, loyal.
I've followed.
And Pradeep works directly with the group office of UPL in the strategy. And thanks, Pradeep ji, you've been so supportive.
So INI farms, I made a slide on your INI also, because what is happening, the key areas of opportunities on the food and vegetable processing. I think you have expanded in terms of storage capacity from the angle of ready to cook, which I presume. So your company's name is of course coming, like Safal has done, or companies like mostly the oranges and all. Right, sir. I'll just take off then. Thank you.
Thanks, Pradeep ji. Thanks. I request Shivam to come on line. Shivam Krish.
Hi, Purnima. This is Shivam Krish from Adelaide, Australia.
Wow.
I see a lot of really interesting problems in the farmer creating different grades of produce, and that's a fundamental problem in agriculture, that everything is not of the same grade. And one of the solutions that many people are working on is using phone technology and using image processing to be able to grade so that there's better categorization and better profit to the farmer. What are your thoughts on the current efforts and whether it will be a useful technology, whether it's feasible and also its uptake?
Yeah, so Shivam, I think the technology solutions that are currently available are more on the post-harvest side. So once the product is harvested, then grading is supported by all the sensing technologies that are currently available. However, at the farm level itself, when it comes to supporting the farmer, I think we need to invest a whole lot on the growing practices to ensure that the categorization of A, B, C, D improves, and you have more of the higher quality grade product getting harvested at the field itself in the first place. And there, I think it's in the Indian context, it's a lot about investing into growing practices, getting the right set of technology interventions at the field itself to ensure a better quality produce coming out of the field.
Hope your question is answered, Shivam.
Yes, that's good. But one follow-on question: what are Indian buyers doing to essentially advise farmers? So, because Woolworths and Coles and companies like that here actually have farm education programs and reach back to farming to ensure that kind of quality. Just like to get a sense of what's happening.
Yeah, so absolutely, Shivam. I think that's where companies like INI come in, and the whole construct for us is that we start supporting the farmers on the kind of technology interventions that need to happen. So, way back about 15 years ago, when we started looking at banana, we realized what were the issues of banana cultivation here in India, and we got some technology support from overseas to support farmer on what kind of interventions they were required to do. So that's the kind of role that organizations like us play when it comes to getting these practices available to farmers.
Thank you, Purnima.
Thanks, Shivam, for joining all the way from late hour in Australia. You could still. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'll take maybe quickly 2 more questions, then we'll wind up. Sudhir Goyal ji, Mr. Sudhir Goyal. Yes, sir, you can go ahead.
How do we create?
Sir, can you introduce yourself? Of course, I know you, we know, but we can't hear you. Can you come closer to the mic? Sir, we cannot hear you.
I don't know. It is on right now. Are you able to hear?
No. Can we come back to you?
Yes, I have put my question on the chat. You can see. Okay.
Yeah, we will try and answer that. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, let me go to Amit Kumar Mittal ji. Mr. Amit Kumar Mittal, can you introduce and ask your question?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a technocrat basically, but from a farmer's family. So we have got a horticulture place also with us, in which we are growing mangoes, peaches and all. Now, my question is regarding this contract farming, what Mr. Pankaj has mentioned. What I feel that contract farming is, again, it is a agreement between 2 parties which have got conflict of interest. So my opinion is that rather than having the contract farming, we must have a collaborative formation. Like, collaboration of right from the seed grower till the selling of the product. We must have this kind of arrangement so that every party, every collaborator involved reaps the benefit to the proportion they are invested into that or they are involved into that. That is my opinion. What is your take on that?
I fundamentally don't see why contract is between 2 parties who are opposed to each other, right? Or there is a fundamental conflict there. There's always going to be a conflict of the price between 2 parties for any transaction, right? One would say less, one would say more. That is not actually the core of the problem. The core of the problem is that how do you create value together? So your thought is absolutely right. It's actually a collaborative mechanism to be able to generate value. Now, who shares what part of the value in any business transaction is driven by who's having what kind of power fundamentally, right? But it's actually driven by market in these kind of spaces because there are hundreds and thousands of small farmers and hundreds and thousands of small buyers. No one is a price determiner as far as that the cause of conflict is concerned. Where the collaboration needs to come in is absolutely right, which is more in terms of what we are growing, how we are growing. Is food safety an important issue? So the contract is fundamentally about how you and I are going to work together, right? So that the conflicts are not there and we put everything upfront and say, okay, in these kind of situations, this is what's going to happen. So fundamentally, contract farming we have to focus on the contract part of it, which is between two set of people who say that this is how we are collaboratively going to work together. Any kind of collaboration would always require some kind of documentation. Okay, so you call it by whatever name, it's not going to change. Whether it is contract farming or collaborative farming, you have to put something on the paper to be able to drive. Where regulatory changes come into picture is whether it is an enabler or it is a disabler of that particular transaction. Okay? So the earlier, just to give you the kind of issues and where I believe that these changes are going to be very beneficial, is that the first set of contract farming acts used to talk about things like if there is a default on the part of sponsor, you could be banned for 5 years for doing any transaction. Right? Why should I even get into contract? Is there any benefit of getting into a contract to put these kind of clauses? Right? You have to be fair. Today it talks about a resolution mechanism which says that there would be a district level authority who's going to determine, and there's penalty which is financial penalties associated by not keeping the contract. Right? The differential penalties, yes, a farmer would have less penalty than a sponsor, which is fair in my opinion. But having said that, it's a far fairer way of allowing two people to get into a contract rather than assuming that one is a thief and other is not. Right? So that's the difference in the new Contract Farming Act. But fundamentally, it is about collaboration, but any contract would be required to do any collaboration. Right? Some contract would be required. So I don't think in my mind, there's a difference. It's a semantics difference, and not that the contract farming is actually supposed to drive the collaboration. That is how it's supposed to be.
Thank you, Mr. Pankaj. May I have another small question to Mr. Naidu?
Yes, yes, Amit.
Yeah. Now you are exporting all pomegranates outside of India.
Yeah.
How do you, is there a condition of getting organic material only for that? Like your produce should only be organic? Is there any mandatory requirement? No. If it is, then how do you get the farmers to grow only organic? Particularly when people are growing in a conventional way, how do you convince the farmers to grow this organic organic produce?
So basically, we are not exactly into organic production, organic products. It is what we source is residue-free products. And as you may clearly see, wherever the contract production is, it is collaborative. It has to be a win-win situation for me and you both. I want you to produce to my standards, and my standards are determined by my customers. So in fact, if it is organic product, yes, there is a separate premium market for that organic product. We can go with that, but we are not restricting only to organic growers. We can source anywhere, and we will always assist the farmers in producing to our standards. We always work together with our growers.
So there are no restrictions basically for export that you have to be organic only. No. It's not like that.
There is no restriction. We need to monitor the chemicals, what need to be used and what need not to be used. And we check on each and every lot of the produce, what we source, and it has to be to the standards with respect to the chemical residues.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all panelists as well as the forum, which has brought such a good kind of things to me. I am a technocrat, but very much interested in agriculture area. The reason is that I think this is the future, and most of the people in India are basically based on that agriculture only. Thank you so much.
Isliye we call Desh ka culture agriculture.
Yeah. I'm basically from agriculture university only. I'm from GB Pant University, so I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends in
I am from the same university too. Thank you. Awesome. We'll connect on offline. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes.
All the best. Take care.
Thanks, Amit. Now I'll take a last question. I mean, you can see you've been the most popular show probably so far on my Ray Talks. You guys in demand. So I cannot satisfy everybody. I'll take last question. Daljit Singh. Hi, Daljit. Are you there? Daljit?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes. You can introduce and put a quick question.
Good evening, everyone. This is Daljit Singh from Nandi Foundation, Hyderabad-based NGO. And I have seen that post-COVID demand for organic, safe and nutritious produce is increasing significantly, not only across the world, but also domestically. So my question to basically Purnima and Pankaj and also to Mr. Vilas Shinde, that are we also planning to produce some crops organically on a large scale for export potential as well as for domestic demand?
As a company, as of now, we are not into organic, and we strongly believe in the food safe concept, which is conventionally grown, but it is something which is safe for the environment and safe for the consumption. So all our efforts, as Mr. Naidu had also mentioned, is actually driven towards educating the farmers as to what chemicals to use, what not to use, what is the right mechanism of using a chemical, right? It's not just about what to use and what not to use.
Absolutely.
A whole lot of knowledge and science associated with the mechanisms of usage itself. And that's where the problems in India lie. Organic is growing. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But even if I were to look at next 10 years, my gut sense is that organic would not be more than 2% of India's consumption, right? What do we do with 98%? I personally believe that we should solve the 98% problem first and then get to the 2. And it's a huge market. I mean, there are a lot of companies, a lot of businesses who are working on it. But for us, it's actually about conventional farming. And it's about how do you make conventional farming environment friendly and safe food. That's our absolute and total focus. So as a company, we are not into organic at all.
Thanks. Right.
Thanks, Daljit. Thanks, all the audience. Awesome. The number is still high who are still in the auditorium. We have already 1 hour 45 minutes. That is 105 minutes away since we started. Quickly, can we sum up, I mean, with your takeaways to the audience and what we can, the road ahead for horticulture? Vilasji?
I think horticulture is a real opportunity area for Indian farmers, because the small farmers who could get the whatever is the expected returns from the farming, that minimum 1 lakh rupees per acre, that is possible only through the horticulture. With the traditional crops, definitely the farmer cannot sustain. So that's why the horticulture sector should be considered purely a hardcore industry for the rural development in any state of India. And that's why the government and also the other stakeholders, everybody should be aligned with this thought that through horticulture, the real prosperity is possible in country. And with that thought, if everybody will focus on creating the brands in the horticulture sector, which are globally recognized, I think then there will be a real impact on the overall rural community.
Awesome. That's true. I think we'll go to Pankaj.
Horticulture perspective, I think we have fabulous future over next 10 years. I really think that what I said the statement earlier, all stars are aligned. There's very supportive government policies that have come into place. There's massive amount of investments that have started to come. There's more than, I mean, estimated that we should be able to attract more than $500 billion of investment into entire agriculture space. Horticulture is going to be a big beneficiary of that. There's a whole lot of quality of entrepreneurs who have come in, which wasn't there 10 years ago. There is the alignment with respect to the markets on the demand side. And as a country, we are moving into a consumer-driven thinking process. So I actually think that the stars are aligned. It's up to us to make the best use of the opportunity. So all the best to the farmers and to the entrepreneurs and to the consumers, because we are getting into a fabulous phase. We have to enjoy this.
It's good. We are such a nice thing. Naidu sir?
Yeah, see, horticulture is a huge field. It is no less than an IT or tech field. One has to have his own passion to be in this, and they should have a consistency to sustain in this business, because horticulture is always, we are dependent on a lot of natural factors like rain, no rain, calamities, so many things. But one should not be like, afraid if 1-2 years is losing and the next third year he is trying to shift over the business. There are a lot of, like one of our tech people, somebody spoke to us, a lot of youngsters are coming into this field. Everybody need to take it as a separate segment for anybody to develop itself as a business, not as a farming. Farming has to be considered as a business, and they have to develop that passion. They have to have the consistency to sustain this. I would say every farmer or every horticulturist, he has to take his balance sheet once in 5 years, not every year, because in once in 5 years, definitely there is a year which he gets zero. So he has to consider his balance sheet once in 5 years kind of a situation. And if they have such kind of long-term thinking and doing something in this field, this is no less than any IT field or tech field, people can consider, particularly the youngsters, they should understand what industry needs and what is that we need to do, then it can make a good sense.
Raj, you're on mute.
So 5 years period, yes, 5 years period. It's a nice takeaway from you here. And one of the things when you said youngsters, when this COVID started, and then there was a lot of migration from the laborers, and of course we had challenges faced, especially from agri sector like your companies. But most of this labor, when they went back to their villages or the places, I think most of them got into the agriculture. So let's see if they take some savviness of what you call business sense from the cities or urban areas, and if they can develop into a corporate or a business culture sense, not exactly corporate, a business sense into farming, and that would really make a lot of sense. Thanks, Naidu Garu. And Purnima.
So Raj, this is unfair. You started with me, you're closing with me.
That's the reason I'm closing with you.
So, no, I think most of the
very rare opportunity, welcome and valedictory address from the same person.
No, thank you so much for that honor. That's how I would like to consider this. But most of the things have been covered, and I genuinely believe that you talked about in terms of creating a structure, creating a corporate environment around this whole horticulture space. I think as a company, that's what we've set out with, and we think genuinely that it's a bright future ahead of us. I think we need more and more people to look at this space and look at this space not as an allied industry, but as a mainstream industry. That I'm doing something, but I also want to do farming is not how people should look at it. But that, this is the main business that I would like to pursue. And yeah, so great times ahead of us. I think in terms of the crops, India is still talking about just a few crops in the international context. And I think the opportunity is far greater. We can talk about a lot more crops out of India from an export standpoint that needs to be built over the next 10 years. And I think that's where the future is for all of us. So on that note, thank you so much.
I think most of you use the term next 10 years. That means this is going to be a golden decade for horticulture.
Oh, absolutely.
This is not a yearly business. You need to have a long-term business plan.
Absolutely. True. So awesome. I think I really enjoyed talking to all of you, and thanks to my so-called fans, I call them now. I don't no more call them audience or attendees. My fans who've been encouraging, and you see even now the hands are up. They would love to go on and on, though we say for 60 minutes, but it goes almost for 2 hours now. So thank you, Pankaj, Purnima, Naidu Garu, and Vilasji for taking out your time. I know working at home from home has actually become more busy than what would have been doing earlier. And a lot of insights from today's sessions. And some of you who had maybe were the first time for this webinar or the RayTalk series, which is now globally acclaimed. Today we have 23 countries registrations. You saw that people speaking from different continents. That's the interest we are generating, because that's because people want to know what's happening in India, and we are giving a lot of positive vibes across the globe through RayTalks. So, and we are posting all our chats on YouTube. you can visit YouTube/Ray Consulting. And we have Facebook and LinkedIn page for updates. You can visit those and like and subscribe, so you get updates on that. And without the leaders, without this awesome topics, this Ray Talks would have not happened. And thank you so much, all of you. And we'll keep in touch. I think each one of you gave an idea. Probably many more of Ray Talks can happen on the subjects which we spoke today on various aspects. With this, I end. And I thank once again my sponsors, Shree Bioaesthetics, Seedworks International, and Cytozyme from the US. And Ray Consulting is always available to add value to the agri-value chain. If companies or corporates needs any support, any guidance, Ray Consulting is always available. So thank you so much, and hope to see you soon on this show again.
Thank you so much, Raj. An absolute pleasure being on this panel with Mr. Naidu and Mr. Shinde. Thank you.
Awesome. That's what is a power-packed panel today.
I am honored to be with the youngsters like this.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Mr. Naidu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right. Bye-bye. Take care in this pandemic time. Still stay safe.
Good day and greetings from Seedworks. My name is Vasantawada Venkatram. I work as CEO for Seedworks International Private Limited, based out of Hyderabad, India. Seedworks' vision is to provide superior seed solutions by harnessing technologies and innovation to create value for all stakeholders in a sustainable manner. At Seedworks, we are committed to enhance the livelihood of the farming community by closely working with public, private, and civil society to meet the national goal of doubling up the farmer sector. The introduction of Agriculture 4.0 has paved the way for a new space in agriculture, which we now call as the agri-tech sector. Companies use the latest and emerging technologies in agri-sector as an engine for sustainable growth. At Seedworks, being a life science and technology company, we are focusing on digitization and innovation as levers to meet the social, environmental, and the economic growth of the seed ecosystem.